Welcome, everyone. Okay. Welcome, everyone.
Thank you.
I just want to make sure that everyone can hear me online as well. Okay. Right. Okay. I think we have something like 400 plus people online. So I think cognizant of time for those who are actually online, but welcome everyone also in the room. My name is Julia Renaud, and I'm Senior Director at Breakthrough Energy, based in Paris. Thank you so much for joining us today for the introductory workshop on the EU Catalyst Partnership. For those who don't know Breakthrough Energy, we were founded by Bill Gates in 2015 at the Paris COP, and we're focused on accelerating the world's journey to a clean energy future. We're singularly focused on developing and scaling up the technologies that reduce greenhouse gas emissions by 0.5 gigatons of CO2 at scale, and particularly as well to drive down those costs of those clean technologies and what we call the green premium. If I may ask everyone online, sorry, if they can mute themselves. I don't want to call out names because I think that's a bit not ideal, but there is someone that we can all see on the screen. Okay. So at Breakthrough, we collaborate with partners from the public, the private, and the philanthropic sector to support this transition and to support the technologies from every stage, what we call the 3Ds, from discovery to development, all the way down to deployment. We're here to speak about the EU Catalyst Partnership, which was signed in 2021. To explain what our partnership is solving for, we all know that the EU has a long-standing strength when it comes to developing new technologies, but it's a hard point when it comes to scaling and industrializing those technologies. And when we look at all of the projects that we're going to be focused on within the EU Catalyst Partnership, there's a lot of announcements, but lift the curtain. And this is where final investment decisions are challenging. So to address this particular challenge of scaling and industrializing, we crafted and signed the partnership with no better partners than the European Commission and the European Investment Bank. And we're trying to help de-risk projects, blend funding, and attract long-term offtake agreements. And we need more of these types of partnerships, and we need more of these types of efforts. So we have a few unique attributes that Mario will speak up to later. First, offering a flexible tool that can support the technologies over a long period of time, scaling them to what we call investability and bankability. Second is close the financing gap that currently cannot be filled by the market alone, and by providing, as I mentioned, unique blended capital and flexible capital. And last but not least, to be complementing the set of tools and instruments that the European Commission and the EIB have. So we're here today, you can see the agenda, or there was the agenda, to provide you with an overview of the partnership, to share the progress we have made, and we'll be highlighting the 2 European projects that we signed and that we partnered with that are currently building, in the process of soon building and getting those shovels in the ground. But we're also here for a call to action and to invite project developers across Europe to join us in this effort. But before we go into the details of what the partnership is about, I wanted to pass the microphone to our 2 representatives from the European Commission. Stephanie Hilsinger, who's Head of Unit of Low Carbon Technologies and Innovation from DG Klima, and Anders Inotai, who's Head of Unit for Innovation and Access to Finance. Stephanie, you have the floor.
Thank you, and good afternoon, everyone. It's a real pleasure to be here today with you. Indeed, my unit or my team in DG Klima is very deeply involved into financing innovation, innovative technologies. We operate the EU Innovation Fund, which is a fund that until 2030 has a budget of 40 billion euros available to support innovative low-carbon technologies. We just had 2 very successful stakeholder events over the past 2 days with a lot of interest from the community, but also we could present, for example, the results of the first ever European hydrogen auction that we launched under the Innovation Fund last year, and that had received a great response. Today is a bit of a different topic, so I'm not going to speak in detail about the Innovation Fund, but the Innovation Fund also contributes quite significantly to the activities of Breakthrough Energy. So first of all, thank you all again today for joining this Sustainable Energy Day in the context of this Sustainable Energy Week. I think you look at a very interesting program, not only today, but also there are other events being organized, which are really going to explain more in detail the initiatives that we have at EU level. The flagship one project of Ørsted producing e-methanol, and then the Otana project, the Energy Dome, building a CO2-based energy storage facility. With the EU Catalyst Partnership, the European Commission, Breakthrough Energy and the European Investment Bank have joined forces and scale up projects that are high risk for companies, but high gain for the economy as a whole. This is more than an investment program. It brings together great minds and innovators, engineers, entrepreneurs, and investors from the private and public sector, covering the so-called green premium, which is something that we, from the Innovation Fund point of view, are really keen on supporting, because it's a good use of public money in this sense to bridge that green premium. We hope that you find the workshop this afternoon useful, and that the opportunities that will be presented by our colleagues from Breakthrough Energy and the EIB, that you will find them interesting also to further engage with us on funding opportunities. With these words, I hand over the floor to Andras, who will also give you a short introduction, I understand.
Thank you very much. The 2 years ago, we embarked on a project in the EU, which is called the New European Innovation Agenda, where we found that the EU needs to do a lot more to improve its innovation performance in many areas, not least in clean tech and green tech. We also found that the EU has really great assets to win that competition, that global competition for the most innovative clean tech and green tech technologies. We have great researchers, but we do have a problem of bringing research results to the market. One of the problems we identified is access to finance. This is one of the main areas of our innovation strategy, where we found that there's a huge amount of capital missing from helping these companies and technologies scale up. We do have powerful instruments already. We have the Horizon Europe program, which is the largest international research funding program in the world, nearly 100 billion euros over 7 years. And that is substantially funding also breakthrough technologies from a very early research stage, also to higher TRL levels. And with our, I would say, crown jewel, the European Innovation Council Fund, we are also progressively helping these technologies take up with a equity boost of up to 15 million euros. Now, what we have also realized is that these programs themselves are not sufficient, and you do need to team up. You do need to team up with other public funding institutions, and that's why we are having an excellent cooperation with our colleagues in the European Investment Bank Group. But we also need to team up with market players. So that was the reason why we also decided that the Horizon Europe program itself should be part of the Catalyst Partnership, and we have devoted 200 million euros of grants to actually match the grant that is provided by Breakthrough Energy to the final investees. We do believe these products have a great potential. We also see a great interaction between these products and what we already have in the European Innovation Council. One of the projects, which we are very proud of, Energy Dome is actually also a beneficiary of the EIC. So this company has managed to receive not only 2.5 million euros of grants, but also 15 million euros of equity before actually coming to the breakthrough to the Catalyst partnership and also being a beneficiary of that program. So we do believe that these are the synergies. This is the avenue that is there also for many other companies, also for those who are not funded by the EIC, but they have promising clean tech, green tech technologies to bring to the market. And I do hope that some of the examples that you will hear today will also encourage you to apply and benefit from the partnership that we have developed together with our colleagues in the EIB and Breakthrough Energy. And with that, I wish you a great workshop for the rest of the day. Thank you.
Good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen. My name is Anna Krzyżanowska. I'm the advisor for access to finance for innovation at DG Research and Innovation at the European Commission. My job for what is now 20 years at the Commission was to bring what the public sector is doing to the world of finance and make sure that we can build bridges between policy, ideas, technologies, and products, services, and solutions that Europeans need in order to actually put these great ideas into practice. So you've learned from my colleagues what we have done with the Catalyst, and we're very proud of that. But there is quite a big story in how this is being done. And it is my great pleasure to introduce two seasoned professionals who not only know how important our policy is, but how to really spot in the market those companies which have the greatest potential of making that policy ambition and reality. Irene Galvez is a head of division of Cleantech Equity and Growth Capital at the European Investment Bank. And she is providing this part of the financing for companies that is supported by the European Commission. And the driving force from the Breakthrough Energy side is Mario Fernandez, who is the head of Catalyst. They and their teams are really making sure that things will happen in its legal, complex, practical, technical detail to ensure that things happen on the ground. So welcome.
All right. Yeah. So thanks a lot. I appreciate the introductions. I think it's really good that we get some context, and everyone has given us that. But from my perspective, super excited to be here. Really, for us, Europe is such an important geography. We see it as a place where, as Anders said, innovation is happening. Innovation is being funded. I was in Munich yesterday at TUM, and the ecosystem that has been created there is a model that can be replicated all over Europe, all over the world, and it's really impressive. So for us, leaning into Europe is very natural, and this partnership that was created is super important to us. I think there's a lot more to be done, but I have to say that the carrots and stick model that Europe has with such sound and forward-leaning policies is something that we really like to use to move the sector forward. So very proud of that, and very proud to be here. In terms of what it is that we do, I want to give you a bit of background on Catalyst. Maybe not. If the presentation would allow me. Is it not on? No, I think he clicked it, right? Okay, good. Perfect. So let me give you a bit of background on Catalyst. So Breakthrough, as Julia was saying, Breakthrough, we were set up by Bill Gates to tackle the way we organize ourselves is the 5 major challenges, right? Because these are the major factors of emissions. And if you read, our founder's book, you realize that there was a lot of research, there was a lot of thought put into why these are the 5 sort of challenges that we're attacking. From our perspective, Catalyst is just one piece of the puzzle, though. We're not the end or be all. And I think where this works really well is Breakthrough Energy as a whole is a very unique platform, right? It has a discovery arm called Fellows. It has a very large venture arm that has been developing technologies for the past 7 years, has funded 120 different companies. And then, on the deployment side, one of the big tools we have is Catalyst, right? On top of that, there's an umbrella of policy, partnerships, and communications that comes into play and brings it all together. So as a whole, is a really unique platform that does not exist anywhere else. That's really driving, accelerating the deployment of emerging climate technologies. If you look at specifically the problem we're trying to attack, and I'll go more into it from technical perspective, but it's very simple. Every time that a technology reaches its peak, there's a valley that it has to cross. The biggest valley is between the development and the deployment side, right, where it needs to really scale up to large-scale commercialization, and that's where Catalyst plugs in. Again, we at Breakthrough Energy attack the other 2 valleys to 2 different, major significant programs, but the one we're attacking at Catalyst is that one. So Catalyst was founded to really bring together the 3 major stakeholders that we saw as far as pushing technology to be deployed. And that's governments, technology, project developers, and corporates, investors, right? So we are a privately funded entity. We do not take public money. We're privately funded. We're funded in 2 ways. There is investors that give us funds as equity for us to deploy as equity, and there is donors that give us funds for us to deploy it as grants. So we could use both tools, more than $1.5 billion in order to be able to, again, affect this change. Obviously, we're very proud of the government partners that we've aligned, specifically here in Europe, the European Commission and the European Investment Bank. We have each pledged 420 million euros, as it was mentioned before, to be able to, again, accelerate these technologies forward here in Europe. Now, everyone sort of wonders what the sort of the secret sauce of Catalyst is. This is the question I always ask startup, what is your secret sauce? And if you ask me that question, it's pretty simple. It's more than just money, right? It's more than just funds. The Catalyst team was created around an expertise of infrastructure investing, because what we feel is, our conviction is startups, as they grow up and as they develop these technologies, need larger and larger amount of money, of funds that venture capital, even growth capital, cannot sustain, right? And it needs to be much cheaper cost of capital. It needs to be much, much larger ticket. So in order for us to get to where we need to get these companies to, which is, again, not only deployment, but their ability to fund future projects, for us was very important to create an infrastructure investing team of, people that had been doing that before, and that could really understand and shepherd and partner with these companies and their investors as well in order to get them over the line. So what you see here is basically, the fact that we have flexible capital, the fact that we can structure projects, the fact that, we have that expertise, but the results we're trying to achieve are also, again, not just can we build a project, but rather, can we de-risk these technologies in a way that, long-term investors and project finance bank can actually, put money into these projects in the future. Can we create markets? In the U.S., we had a great, we've committed to a great project where the first 10-year of the bankable of the agreement from an airline was signed for that project. That had not been created before, and that is market creation that we bring to the table. And obviously, reducing the green premium by getting people to a much lower cost of capital. So again, it's not just money. And I want to reemphasize that, because when people come to us and say, give me money, again, we want to do more than that. We want to partner. We want to provide skills, know-how, and a pathway to these things on the left-hand side of the page. So We have a specific mandate that we tackle around the different technologies. So it's not necessarily all of them, all of the challenges that Breakthrough Energy tackles, but rather very specific mandate that our donors and our funders and LPs have given us. And this is important because, we get a lot of projects that are worthy projects that, we would love to fund if we had the money for it. But again, our mandate restricts us to these five different sectors. The clean energy, clean hydrogen is one of them. Of course, for us, it's super important to do, green hydrogen or very, very low, ultra low carbon hydrogen. Pathways to that is we're very interested in the fuel space, and that's why SAF is a category onto its own. We like long duration energy storage. We do see it as a huge, there are huge transmission bottlenecks in Europe, in the Americas, all over the world that we're trying to attack. So that's one of the sectors we really like. Along with that, long duration heat storage as well is something that we like to that we are engaging and attacking. Direct air capture and carbon removal is another one that we feel, again, is super important to us. And the last one, which tries to encompass a bit wider, is the decarbonization industry, right? So things like clean cement, clean steel, we're trying to tackle textiles or plastics. And again, anything that really helps industry, especially here in Europe, to help decarbonize for us is a major challenge that we want to tackle. So, in terms of what we do, that is the mandate. That is how we set up. We like to be, nimble. We like to be fast, and we really like to support and partner with companies and investors to get them there and stood up. And I'll go into more examples later and a bit more of the application process. But now I'll turn it over to Irene to talk about the part.
Hello. Oh, good. So good afternoon. A pleasure being here. I'm going to take over from Mario for just a handful of slides, and then he'll continue with the rest of the presentation. As Ana was saying, my name is Irene Galvez. I'm heading the Clean Tech Growth Capital team at the European Investment Bank. We are fronting, so my team, the team of investment officers, are fronting the delivery of the Catalyst partnership in Europe, and more broadly, the deployment of our venture debt program with the European Commission under InvestEU. A lot's been said about this already. I think that this second and third part of the presentation is about bringing things a bit more into tangible, so what it really means. The partnership, I'm sorry to hammer on some of the points, but hopefully you go away with the ideas very clear. The partnership is about mobilizing funding for projects for emerging clean technologies that are being challenged to take FID. Okay, as Julia was mentioning at the beginning of the presentation, the European Commission and Breakthrough Energy, together with Bank, we found a meeting of minds around this overarching priority to make this scale up and this industrialization happen in Europe for these technologies because of their potential in reduction of the green premium and CO2 impact. And what we've done is three things that you see in there. We've put together a partnership around 840 million. So first is the amount. Second is the sectors. Those are the sectors under the partnership. It doesn't mean that they're the sectors for EIB or the Commission more broadly. This is where our minds are meeting. Okay, this is where we're overlapping and sort of doubling firepower. Those 5 sectors that Mario was just mentioning. And the third one is we've come up with this partnership, which is quite unique in the 3 attributes that Julia was mentioning in her remarks. We're tailoring this partnership to the specific challenges of the scale up of clean tech. And we know the challenges, right? We know that clean tech companies are more capital expensive, that the the lab to market time for these asset heavy technologies take much longer than software or asset light. So they need longer capital. This is, I think, the first bullet point in the presentation. The capital stack, it's more complicated, therefore, so you need this blended form of capital is a unique way to complement what's on offer from the sort of VC ecosystem. As Andras was saying, it is complementary to other sources of funds. And the third point is we're specifically targeting technologies that have these capacity to enable the green premium reduction within the lifespan of this partnership, right? So the second point that I'm going to hammer, this is who we are, because you've heard about this before, so I'm going to be brief. You know who we are, but I want to define us in a different way. We are a new form of PPP. We're a new form of private-public partnership. We've come together with capital and execution capabilities in a more streamlined way. So I will repeat that. You already know who we are separately. The point is, why are we together and why this is different? Because we do have the funds separately, but as Andras was saying, we need to be smarter about how we deploy things. So it is about putting together capital with execution capabilities in a more streamlined way. That is, in my opinion, and I've been with EIB for almost 20 years, very unique. And you can see the sense of urgency in the union to address the challenge where we're able to put together these kind of partnerships. Horizon Europe, you've read, is the Europeans' key funding program for research and innovation, 95.5 billion. Innovation Fund, who doesn't know about the Innovation Fund either these days? With EU Fund for Climate Policy of the Union being funded by the ETS. Horizon Europe, 200 million in grants for green premium support grants, and I will explain in a second what that means. Innovation Fund boosted our capacity to be able to deploy more venture debt in the form of quasi-equity. And we, EIB, the last bit in there, we're fronting with clients. We are your European point of contact in this partnership. And we're doing so in the framework of InvestEU, which is a partnership agreement that we have with the Commission, as Anna was mentioning. I have two more slides, if you stay with me, just two. One is on the product, and the other one is on the type of projects. And then after that, I'll hand it over to Mario. On the product, what is CIB venture debt or quasi-equity or growth capital? They're all terms that can be used interchangeably. I'm going to answer with three sub-questions. When do we come in? What do we offer? And three, what are the benefits of this instrument? So when do we come in? And I want you to please look at the left-hand side of the slide. No, I clicked, my bad. There you go. Left-hand side, that is the growth journey, the technology growth journey of a company. We come in, EIB with venture debt, Catalyst with equity. We come in the venture stage of a company. That means the company is either at this startup or at the scale-up phase, and that does not yet have access to commercial debt. Okay, so venture stage is the first bit that you need to retain. So what we offer is a debt type facility with a risk type appetite, right? Because it is at the venture stage. So it is a loan that is coupled with a variable remuneration on top to cater for the level of risk that we're taking in that venture, usually in the form of warrants or any other type of equity kicker. And why does it make sense? Why it makes sense? It makes sense because it complements the capital stack of the climate company. It is actually coming to complement equity rounds. We usually come in between equity rounds to give that additional cash runway for the company until they go for the next one. But yet it offers limited dilution to shareholders. So it is usually the first kind of leverage that can be provided to these companies. And it is, in our experience, we've been deploying the venture debt program with the Commission since 2016, right? I think it is. It is that real bridge to bankability. It is what brings them to the last mile before we can actually, and that is the last bullet point at the bottom, is the entry point for a continuing relationship with EIB onto project finance, onto corporate lending, to graduate into the bigger brothers of our institution. How does that translate for Catalyst projects in particular? So, as I was saying, venture stage, scale up, startups and scale ups, two valleys of death, where they have to build that demo plant that starts to cost a lot of money, and technology risk is still very much, I don't want to say binary, but almost still very, very high risk. And that for that first of a kind. So demo and first of a kind, two types of projects, two types of instrument combinations. Please retain this. Demo projects are smaller projects, usually with a project cost between 30 and 100 million. And what we're trying to do with our intervention is to de-risk this earlier stage of the technology. We're going to be looking, both the Catalyst team and us in our due diligence, for a team that is starting already to gear up for this larger construction, right? So we're going from pilot to demo. So we'll already be looking for some skills in the project development capabilities in the team. We're looking for a pilot that has been working, and we will be supporting a demo that proves out the critical components and integration, so TRL 7 to 8. Because our partnership is has a time horizon, we're obviously going to prioritize those projects that are ready to get going and being built in the shortish kind of term. So we're looking at projects that are ready to build in 6 to 9 months. And then, of course, we are going to be looking, and in climate tech, demand is key. Demand risk is key. We are going to be looking for some commercial traction of this. So we're going to be looking that you're able to show that there are people that are willing to sign contracts for what you're trying to produce. How do we support these projects? We support them with a combination of EIB venture debt and Catalyst grant. The EIB venture debt plus Catalyst grant. What are we trying to do here? What we're trying to do is that we close the CapEx, the financing gap faster. We made them happen faster because of our intervention. We improve the economics. We crowd in the equity investors that also have to come in and complement the funding round. Okay, I'm seeing people nodding, so we have questions afterwards. I hope I'm good, clear. Second type of projects as the large, what we call first of a kind. If the other ones are still in the beginning of this scale up, these are really, really the last mile, right? So these are larger projects. Again, we're talking about emerging climate technologies that are we're trying to prove the scale up and the market creation that these projects can have. CapEx for these projects, we have there from 100 to 1 billion. I think that normally that would be the very, very top range of what we can do, obviously, with the amount that we have in the partnership, but larger projects. And in here, obviously, what we're trying to do together with the Catalyst team is really to eventually crowd in not only investors, but banks very shortly thereafter. So putting in place offtake agreements, as you can see at the bottom in there, that have a robust, that can be PF'd, project financed in a relatively short time after COD. Of course, here we're looking at a very robust TPC contractual structure. We're looking at feedstock supply that can match that offtake. We're looking at projects still that are ready to be built between 9 to 12 months. and a fully fledged team that is able to develop the project on time and on budget. Here, the combination that we're proposing under the partnership is one where we couple, so we bring all of the force into here, right? So we're doing Catalyst equity with EIB quasi-equity, Catalyst Green Premium Support Grant, and the Commission via Horizon Europe would be matching that Green Premium Support Grant with an equal amount. And here is very clear, we're trying to reduce the green premium of these projects. We're trying to make them more economical so that it happens. And this, cost, we achieved that reduction in the green premium and cost down trajectory with this intervention. So, well, I think that was what I promised. So,
Thank you. So how do you apply? For us, that's sort of one of the biggest questions around process and application. We have, since I've joined, since I took over Catalyst 18 months ago, we try to make it far more flexible and nimble. And we try to make sure we're very respectful in that, if you come to us with a project and it does not fit our mandate, we tell you that very upfront. And also we note that, EIB has, a whole wealth of products as well that don't necessarily fit into these sectors, but that you could also apply to. So most of the time we would refer them to EIB because, their sectors are far more wide spanning than ours, right? So we try to make it as fast and nimble as we can, given the size of our team, which is 12 people. Again, we don't have 100 people, to be able to review all the applications, every single application in such details. But we do see everything that comes through our door. We do see it, and we try to respond to it. We usually engage the people that fit and apply. Those are the people that we engage with usually. So the application process, again, is online, is on our website. There's a button that says, apply here. We have very specific criteria. Please be very forthright and forthcoming, because, on the first phone call, we're going to find out, the truth. So let's be honest with each other. And now a lot of times what happens is direct engagement, right? I spend a lot of time in Europe in conferences. The team, we have a breakthrough energy team here in Europe. Julia being one of them, but it's 15 to 20 people that are always out there and are always participating in conferences every single week. So therefore, you can have access to us directly. Yesterday, I was sitting on a plane, and a founder happened to be sitting next to me. He took out his laptop, and we pretty much went through it in the 45-minute flight. So it happens, and it happens very regularly. That's a true story. So our point is we're very accessible, right? And as I said, we're very clear, we're accessible, and it should be no one should feel that they don't have access to us or they can't get to us, because there are two ways of doing that, direct engagement or online. I do have to say that, again, we do tend to get back to people when they do fit the criteria, just for the amount of sheer volume of things that come our way. And then there are things that, because we do have a specific criteria, we are a nonprofit set up in the US. We have a specific criteria around impact, replicability, scalability, where there are some things that are, not as, even though they're worthy technologies, even though, again, other institutions in Europe could fund them and would fund them. They don't necessarily fit Catalyst, right? Perfect example is, or they're not in the swim lanes. Electricity generation is not part of our mandate. So again, there are many solutions that, attack this problem in a new way, different from solar, wind, conventional solar, wind, but unfortunately, we just cannot do it. Okay. There are also,
but we can look at it at EIB.
For example, EIB, we refer to EIB on ways to energy, ways to something. For us, it's very difficult to attack that because feedstock and replicability are very challenging. That again, they're still worthy technologies, but unfortunately, Catalyst cannot take on them. So, there are things that you might be confused as to why we don't get back to you, why you don't apply. Yes, there you go. But just so you know, we're very thorough with our process, and it has to fit our mandate. Okay. And in terms of process, again, once we have the information, what we do is, again, we cross collaborate. Usually Catalyst is leading the business development side of the partnership, but we cross collaborating that if we feel there is a opportunity that's fit for Catalyst, we usually bring EIB very quickly on board, and we try to attack it together. Now, there's our parallel process. There's not an EU Catalyst IC or sort of entity, but rather it's two separate entities running, parallel processes in an already established manner, right? That we handle. So the idea is for us to, again, analyze due diligence, negotiate, and approve in parallel these things to each our own processes, and then get to achieve funding on other products at the same time, especially on the venture/grant product. It is a package deal. We would like to make it a package deal in that, of course, everybody wants the grant. Of course, everybody wants the money. But we feel
No, I think you need to take the microphone.
can you hear me? You can hear me, right?
No, you need to take.
Hello? Yeah. Okay. So anyway, they're parallel processes, and we try to get there at the same time. Yeah, if you can, please.
I was just going to say, so basically for the Catalyst partnership, right, Catalyst partnership involves this unique combination of instruments. The first point of contact would be Catalyst. Okay, if you fit the criteria. As Mari was saying, we get in touch very quickly with one another. We say, hey, we have a deal that is looking good for the partnership. And then we start running the process that Mari just mentioned. And then we do it in parallel, but it is a relatively, parallel process. I just wanted to.
Yeah, absolutely. All right. So what have we achieved? Again, the question is probably ask of why is it that we have no more projects, and it's a very fair question, and the reason for this is it's just extremely difficult. Getting these projects done in Europe and elsewhere in the world is extremely difficult. Unfortunately, we live in a world where headlines, PR announcements are sort of lead the way, but reality and steel on the ground, as we like to say, falls very, very short of those headlines and those LinkedIn announcements. A great example of this is in the US, something like 30 gigawatts of electrolyzers have been announced in the past couple of years. But the reality is the one project we've committed to, a 70 megawatt SAF e-fuels project in Texas with Infinium, they started out with a 10 megawatt demo. 10 megawatt of electrolyzers. It is the largest plant in North America that's kicking out fuel right now for power to liquids. So just imagine that, right? You think gigas and gigas of announcements versus 10 megawatts, drop in the bucket. So it is important that, we have a sense of reality that getting projects done is extremely hard, right? And, it's hard in the renewable sector, in the conventional renewable sector, but when you translate that to technologies that have never been designed, engineered, built before, with components that are being literally brought from lab to pilot to demonstration project, it is a huge challenge. And I don't want to undermine that because I feel like it's sort of the elephant in the room that nobody wants to talk about. But again, we try to pick the best, we found the two most advanced projects, in Energy Dome. We found a project that is attacking a huge problem, which is, again, large-scale deployment of renewables plus the lack of wide transmission in the continent, right? And then, they were the first ones actually to be able to say, I have a demonstration project. I want to go commercial scale demonstration. And that's why we backed them. And that construction has started in earnest. And we'll hear hopefully we can hear in a bit from someone at Energy Dome if they can join. But, this was a monumental project. And again, is that everyone talks about storage, but there is very few technologies that actually have gotten to a point where they're deployable. And there is only one that actually is constructing a project of that technology, and that's Energy Dome. So as Anders said, this is a monumental project for Europe. It's being done in Sardinia. And it's one where we attacked with the first product that Irene mentioned, which is Catalyst came in as a grant because it does have a large green premium right now because it hasn't been, these domes are not being manufactured to scale. However, though, and the EIB came in with venture debt for the corporate. I think the story is also when we are able to tell it in about 9 months when COD happens in Sardinia, the story is even more compelling than that. The turbines being used to regasify, to shift the CO2 between the dome and the tanks, those are turbines that used to be deployed in the oil and gas sector, right? So there's a company in Germany who makes these turbines who leaned into Energy Dome, put a whole bunch of engineers on site there, and actually are now taking oil and gas turbines and putting them into emerging climate technologies. The amazing thing about this is there's going to be a whole bunch of workers in Europe that are now being retrained into emerging climate technologies in a way that haven't before. So again, the way we look at these projects from an impact perspective is really important. And we think it has, again, downstream effects that, the headline doesn't really tell that story, but however, we're very proud of. And then the other project that we committed to is Ørsted Flagship 1 project. Again, many hundreds of projects announced in the e-fuels, in the hydrogen space in Europe, very few that are being sort of advanced the way that Ørsted is advancing Flagship 1. These are very, very challenging projects. They've never been built before. They are, the equipment being supplied by very large and established OEM players in Europe has never been deployed at this scale and like this. So again, you have a set of factors of brand new technologies, even if they're from established companies, that make these projects extremely difficult. They've never been designed, they've never been engineered before, they've never been constructed. So this is part of the reason why we wanted to lean in. It was one of the leading sort of projects in Europe that we can find in this space. So with that, I would like to just take a moment and, zoom out a bit more. And I want to tell you about what, from the Catalyst and, the EU Catalyst perspective, the advantage here is being able to see so many projects. And in the past 18 months, we've seen over 275 projects that have come across our desks. And what we find is, people would come to us and say, hey, is there a roadmap? How do I do this? How do I get to success? And what we find is, one is we really needed to define the problem. I think everyone believes the problem is capital, and it is, but capital how? How do you get to that capital? And then there was a bunch of lessons learned that we've seen along the way of startups and their investors making decisions that usually let them away from that capital or let them into, accelerating themselves towards that capital. So we've gathered this up and we're starting, this will be published in the next couple of months online, but so far we've done the rounds. Again, I was in Munich yesterday at the university doing this for a set of investors and startup companies. And, I think people are really engaged with this material. It speaks to them and it really validates perhaps some of the decisions that they've made at startups in this field. So, what we call this is basically 12 keys to scaling up. And again, we think there's 12 critical decisions that people can make to help them accelerate towards this capital. Again, in terms of finding the problem, I think it's clear, but basically, yeah, perfect. So basically, for developed technologies at the top, there's a lot of money that can go in even in a project development part of it. And during construction and operations, there's a lot of money that goes in via project finance, core infra, growth infra. There's strategics putting money into this, and there's a lot of private equity funds. Unfortunately, at the bottom, what you see is emerging climate technologies, where the science has been proven, but unfortunately, the projects have not been de-risked in a way that investors and project finance bank want to go into it. So you see those sectors such as private equity, infrastructure investors, project finance, they're just not present. And the answer that every time startups go to these investors, the answer is, I love it. Come back when you've deployed, a few of these, right? And that's, people are chuckling around the room because that's what they hear. Obviously the strategics, there is government loans, government grants, but just not enough capital. And again, why is that capital important? Because as you can see, the very large tickets that those two sectors, infrastructure equity and project finance, can put, and the cost of that capital is extremely low, and the tickets are extremely large, and that's what we're going to need to get to that. So the punchline to all this is, why is it so hard to access this capital? Is because it's a very regimented analysis that they do. Infrastructure investors do not like to lose money. We know large infrastructure funds that have deployed, $50+ billion, that their track record shows they have lost $0 in any individual project. So imagine that, deploying $50 billion and never losing money. This is why they take such, care on doing due diligence and really betting on things that are sure things. And the set of criteria, as most people know it, is they want widely deployed millions of operating hours. They want a very strong EPC plan. It used to be fully wrapped. It's not the case anymore, but still, very strong contractual arrangements. They want contracted long-term cash flows. They want to be able to have all of the risk very well structured around the project, long performance record, and also, their ability to deploy 500 million plus tickets of capital, right? So unfortunately, and obviously profitable. Unfortunately, emerging climate technologies today do not offer many of these checkboxes. So what we try to do is we try to bring companies to a place where they can check some of these boxes as best as they can, knowing that, the million of operating hours is just not there and won't be there. But hopefully with everything else being well structured, they could convince some investors to try to come in early, as Irene was saying earlier. Why is this? Why is existential? Why is it existential to get to this type of capital? We looked at two different technologies, real technologies. Their first three projects for technology A on the top, the blue one, it has a total capex cost of 1.6 billion. The second technology, the first three projects have a total cost of almost $5 billion. If you were going to, finance those projects with infrastructure equity or project finance, you would spend about a third of the capital costs, or just capital costs, versus if you were doing it with growth equity and private equity. So hugely, a huge difference in cost and the amount of money that has to be raised, just because you get to a cheaper cost of capital. And then the other sort of metric of measuring this is, if you did these projects with growth equity or private equity, you could offer the same exact product, whatever that product might be, and whatever unit that is, on a 65%, more or less, if you do project finance and infrastructure finance. So the same product, just because of the cost of capital, could be, the price of that product could be lower 65%. And this is why it's so telling and it's so urgent to get these technologies to a cheaper cost of capital. For us, again, there's an easier way of doing it, but of seeing this. But basically, the 12 keys are here. The keyhole in the middle. We try to be funny and clever, but basically, these are the things that we think are the 12 key decisions that people can make. The first one, let me give you an easier view on this, but basically the first one is to unlock that cheaper cost of capital. The first one is committing to a first of a kind project. Many companies think that they can develop a technology and license it the next day. And they're going to sell all these licenses and people are going to want to build that project. But the reality is that nobody really wants to build anything that hasn't been built before. Again, so we go down the list of all these lessons, such as, building a demonstration project. Many people want to go from lab pilot to a $500 million project. It doesn't work. We've seen it doesn't work. There's a lot of benefits to building a demonstration project in terms of learnings, in terms of, how to design it, how to engineer it, how to build it, how to operate it, that makes the probability of success in the first of a kind commercial project much, much higher. And it makes investors and your Series B, Series C far more comfortable that you know what you're doing and you have built a team to do that. So again, this is something that we're going to roll out publicly later on this year, and we will have more workshops in the EU around this. But that was just to give you a flavor of basically what we do at Catalyst and into the EU Catalyst partnership. That is not just funds, it's not just money, but rather how do we advance the whole ecosystem, the whole sector forward in a way where we get far more projects than the ones we've done now, and we see more things being developed and get steel on the ground. So at this time, Ben, I'm not sure if you're on the line.
Hi, Mario. I'm here. I hope you can hear me.
There you go. So we have Ben Porter. He's the CEO Energy Dome. He has been Energy Dome was one of the first projects that we actually engaged with back in January. And, as I was saying, is the engagement that we have with the companies to really try to bring them to a place where their project is well structured in a way that maximizes the success of that particular project, but not only that, but the replicability, meaning that those structures, that set of contracts can be used many times after that to deploy the technology faster. That is what the engagement, the partnership we have between the European, the EIB, Catalyst, and the company when we engage with this. So we'd love for Ben to tell us a little bit more about that engagement, sort of the application process, the engagement, but really, what that partnership is all about, Ben. That would be very helpful. Thank you.
Sure. Thanks, Mario. So I'll quickly just introduce Energy Dome. Then I'll go through about how we actually reached a deal with the EU Catalyst, and then finally I'll go into the value provided. So basically, Energy Dome is a long-duration energy storage technology and infrastructure company. Our technology is based on a thermodynamic process where we use carbon dioxide as a working fluid. So it's a brand new process, but we use known components that come from the oil and gas, thermal power, and process industries. So that's one of the reasons we've been able to go so quickly since we were founded in 2020, both because the team has a long experience in the power industry and in putting new products into the market, but also because the new product and the new technology was designed for existing supply chains. So we have a dual business model of doing build and operate of our CO2 battery long duration energy storage projects, where we develop, fund, build, own, and operate the assets in exchange for long-term offtake agreements with tier one customers. Or alternatively, we sell the technology as an original equipment manufacturer in a direct equipment supply arrangement. And as Mario was saying, so when you bring a new technology to the market, you have to prove that it works not just at demonstration scale, but also in the first of a kind. And it's quite difficult to sell OEM equipment if it's never been seen before. So that really does underline the need to do first of a kind yourself to be able to show that it works exactly as you say it does. So we'd actually raised 13 million euros. So we'd raised our Series A when we learned about EU Catalyst. And at that time, the partnership had just been formed. So we were one of the first companies, I think, that must have applied when the application went live. At that time, you applied online. This was in Q1 of 2022. We then went through a process where we were short selected. We went through technology due diligence, and then that lasted, I'd say, about 4 to 6 months. And then at that point, we met Mario and James, who joined from Macquarie and from infrastructure funds, bringing significant commercial and deal-making capability to the team. And in parallel to that, we first met Irene and the EIB team in Brussels in February 2023. At that point, we were raising our Series B. And we learned about the venture debt product in a bit more detail. We then started engaging with the overall venture debt process. We applied and went through a parallel DD process with the EIB. So I'd say one thing that's very important to understand about EU Catalyst is I'd like to think it's one marriage, but you enter two families. So once you get the deal over the line, you become part of the EU family, but you also become part of the Breakthrough Energy family. But you're dealing with both organizations at the same time. They're both large organizations, and so you need to kind of invest in a process. It's not going to be short. Process is going to take its time, and that's because the level of due diligence is very high. The standards are very high. The reputational risk to the parties is very high. If things go wrong, but that makes a real high bar of excellence for all parties to have to surpass. So I'd say anyone who's considering this, this is the ideal first of a kind partnership to enter into. But you are going to have to deal with both organizations. It is streamlined, and you get a combined venture debt and grant or equity type product. So I'd say first time and applied, right? So kind of spring of 2022 when we applied for Catalyst, and then by the time we closed the deal, it was November, December of 2023. That was over a year of time and due diligence, but certainly well worth it. I would say you not only enter the families of the European Union and Breakthrough Energy, you don't just get capital in the form of venture debt and the catalytic capital available from Breakthrough Energy, but you get exposure to standards, to a mentality and a way of learning that I think really raises the bar of your organization, particularly if you're a startup or a scale-up that's coming from taking something from inception through to something which is going to be used everywhere in the world. And these come from very strict conditions precedent for the transactions to be executed. So health and safety through to basically the transaction documents, etc. No corners can be cut, right? Every single thing has to be done properly and documented, and all the way through to things like when you're actually building your plant. I could just give you an example. We have an independent engineer, which is Fickner Engineering, which is part of the arrangement that we had an independent engineer alongside us to build the plant, and that has led to I'd say a substantial change in mindset in our organization. It's led to the development and the institutionalization of procedures, processes, and a way about building plants, which I think we benefited from enormously in a way that I don't think you ever see in a PowerPoint presentation or in anything like that, because basically the first of a kind plant, when you actually see it, is the culmination of all of those things. So certainly it's a tremendous partnership. I think we're very lucky that we were found at a time when this solution came to the market. I can't think of how difficult it must have been for climate tech startups doing this 10 years ago. So big thanks to them. I'm happy to expand or go take any questions if there are any.
Thank you, Ben. That's very kind of you. Guys, congratulations. I hardly ever talk to people who went through a banking process and consider it to be tough but fun. So I think that you cannot really get a better compliment from a client. Thanks, Ben, for staying in case there's a question that could go to you as a beneficiary. I have also hardly ever been in charge of a panel that actually kept to timing. So thank you very much for that. It gives us more time for questions. Please do not make the first question, what is Mario's travel schedule? If you want to make a pitch, you actually have to make an appointment. But please feel free to ask the questions to our panelists or to the beneficiary of the catalyst. Or to European Commission, of course. Please state your name and your organization.
Yeah, my name is Kari Suninen from Finland. I'm representing Innovative Energy Storage at Elster Company. My question actually is to all of you. You mentioned this ready to build 6 to 9 months or then 9 to 12 months. So I guess it means ready to start the project. But do you have requirements when the commission should be done after the start of a project? So in a way, the timeline requirements.
You mean a construction timeline requirement?
Yeah, basically until you start the operation of the plant. So any limitations for that? No, I mean, obviously the independent engineer has to opine on it, and our own construction expert has to opine on it, that it's reasonable. But no, we care more when construction starts rather than when it finishes. Thank you. We do care a lot that construction finishes, though. Just to be clear.
Well, I'm not surprised. Before I give you the floor, I would like to get a message to our participants online. A colleague of mine is gathering questions from you as well, and we'll come to those questions in a moment. So please take the time to put your questions in writing, and we will come back to you in a moment.
Thank you. I'm Andrews. I run floating power plant. We develop floating solutions that also make green hydrogen offshore. So the question is, you say you don't fund the electron generation, but you fund the storage and the electrolyzer. How gray is that? Can you combine the two things? Can there be energy generation in your long-term storage, or is it only the long-term storage?
It's a good question, and I'm probably going to answer it in a roundabout way. But again, what we're trying to do is making sure our euros have a lot of impact in terms of the project would not have happened if we hadn't come in. Part of the issue with generation, just funding pure generation, is that there is so much capital going into generation, right? That for us, it's not impactful to fund generation. So we would need to look at the specific case. I'm not saying no, but we have been brought projects where the innovative technology aspect is a small part of a larger generation park. And we've had trouble with that because, again, to fund 75% of our euros go into a solar park and only 25 to an innovative solution, it's difficult for us to justify. Yeah.
Hello, my name is Caroline Berco. I'm a business angel who helps portfolio companies fundraise. So what you shared about the difference between the headlines and what happens on the ground is all too familiar with me. I'd like to have your take on why it is so. So is it that the projects don't reach the stage where they could be meaningful to you? I'm also puzzled by the fact that, quality seal like BEV and the EIB is not enough maybe to still attract crowding other investors. So is that part of the problem? Could you elaborate a little bit? And then the other question I have is about the sectors. When do you plan to renew the sectors that you focus on? Thank you.
Sure. I mean, why is it? No, the challenge is in terms of what it is that we don't see more projects get there. I mean, we could talk about this for hours, but I think the overall theme for us, I think what we see is in the startup tech world, there is a lack of expertise around project development. So again, one of the sort of, it becomes sometimes an afterthought of doing the first project. That's why our first key lesson is commit to the first of a kind, because, you know, it becomes an afterthought. And in fact, you know, on Energy Dome, one of the things that, you know, we did sort of encourage Ben and Claudio to do is really, you know, drive really hard towards one project, even though they had many, many options of projects around the world. So, you know, we do think that, you know, in general, in the startup world, one of the last people to get hired is the project manager and the project engineer and the project developer, as opposed to those are some of the first positions we encourage people to actually hire for. So yeah, look, development takes a long time, right? Interconnections in the United States are taking 7 years. Environmental permits take 2 to 3 years, right? And money can't buy you time. And therefore, if you say you have a project, but you if you don't have a permit, if you haven't applied for an environmental permit, then, hey, let's talk in 3 years, because that's how long it's going to take, right? So I do think that the way that development is done in the solar and wind sector, that's now systematic, repeatable, and there's a really amazing amount of know-how to do that. That's not the case here. It's very bespoken, and it just doesn't happen fast enough. So I would think, again, if we had to talk about one reason for that, is that. Second, you're right that sometimes even the breakthrough energy, we're not breakthrough ventures, but you know, those are cousins, but even a breakthrough energy brand seal of approval and a EIB CC approval sometimes is not enough to bring you know, enough investors in. You know, that is a challenge, and that's why we try to structure things as well as we can. I think the proof will be in the pudding on Energy Dome, but I think one of the things we do think it helps a lot to attract new capital is having done a demonstration project. And we see it over again every time these companies go to raise. The question is, have you done a large enough demonstration project? Do you have data from it? Do you learn? Do you have a team, right? So again, all those things we say you should be putting in place, which Energy Dome has done, you know, really, really well with our partnership. I think, you know, they just need to get done, and that will attract more capital. So it's not going to be easy and it's not going to be automatic, but it will increase the probability that you are able to attract capital.
Just to complement, maybe perhaps on the first point, we're only focused in Europe, and my team, so Catalyst Partnership and the rest of InvestEU Venture Debt Partnership, we invest in about 10 to 15 companies a year with average tickets of around 30 million for venture debt. What we see, what is the issue, what is affecting climate tech versus or more than other sectors, is the fact that the capex needs are really high. And the problem is that you need to go through the pilot, demo, first of a kind. You can't jump. You have to specifically go through those ones and the level of risk when there is a very high investment that needs to be made is very high. So you have high capex and high risk. The issue for investors is that unless you can see a clear path to scale up, it's not investable. You need to be able to show from very early on, if you're an investor, that you have a path to scale up. You can bridge it over there, because it's only at that point when you reach economies of scales and cost. But at the point that you're going in, you're very far from doing that, and you need a lot of money to go in. And like Mario was saying, the 12 keys to scale, the de-risking, the speaking as very, very important thing is that when you're trying to build a project of the types that we're financing, it is the opposite mentality to the Silicon Valley one of fail fast and break things. It's the opposite. You want to de-risk to the extreme. You need to learn, even if you are not talking to banks, you need to learn Banglish from day one, because you need to convince people that you're going to be able to raise the money to get to the finishing line so that they invest today. And that means that because you need not only tech risk, right? And this is the point. First of a kind, it's not just about tech risk. We're talking about project development. Maria was saying about how to build the project. It's a skill in itself. You need to cater for all of this to make the case. And there's where you see the delays in FID that are happening left and right. That's what Maria was saying. It just takes time.
If you don't have public investments, public programs like the EIC, which Ben benefited from, it's actually very difficult. And the other reason they have to get you to is the including banks and VCs, many got burnt because made in the number of sectors, some companies have raised hundreds of millions, but today, a few years down the road, have very little to show for it. Which means that today, when you talk to banks and even VCs who could chip in, they're reluctant to do so because they've had bad experiences, and that makes the
journey for the second generation in deep tech, be it in agriculture and food, which is one of the sectors, unfortunately, which I don't see there, and which by the way
cover under the EIB venture debt commission program.
But it makes it super hard. So how do you survive to the point where you could potentially become relevant for Catalyst? That really is a huge issue.
If I may perhaps say a word on this. We obviously do diagnose the problems the way you do diagnose the problems. But you have heard in the introduction what we have done to date, right? With the EIC, with bringing the companies, with the encouragement of thinking with the end in mind for all the financing that is in public. We do take the criticism that complexity is part of the European support to companies, but we're fixing it. And I believe the Catalyst is a very good example of how we do that. So we hear you loud and clear.
That you evaluate the projects, that makes a hell of a difference.
Let's take one last question from the audience. And
by the way, she was not a paid spokesperson. I just want to say that. But your points are exactly right. We share that mentality and appreciate that. But this is exactly why the partnership was formed, because we wanted a new way, a first of a kind way to attack the problem. And again, it's not going to be enough. It's not going to be enough money. It's not enough sort of hours in the day, but we're trying to do it. And I think what we're trying to do is very important, which is create models, right? Hopefully Energy Dome becomes a model for investors to see that it can be done, and other people can actually fund the next Energy Domes of the world. So thanks a lot.
Okay, we'll take one more question from the audience, if you don't mind. And then we'll go online and then we'll come back to the audience.
Very quick question. It's about sort of geographical. Sorry, I'm Stephen Crocier from Reenergize, a long duration energy storage solution. It's about geographical locations, about the company and the project. And I imagine you may have different answers to where your restriction boundaries might lie for either one of those.
Yeah, I mean, the EU Catalyst Partnership is focused in the EU, so 27 plus 2, I think is the answer. That being said, Catalyst is a global platform, so we are able to fund projects, obviously outside the EU and around the world.
In Europe, indeed, we're about European projects. So the company can be headquartered outside the Union, but a project needs to happen in the EU 27 plus Norway and Iceland.
So I'm going to share some of the questions that are coming online.
This is Javier from DG Clima, by the way. It's not just a random.
Hello, everyone. Javier Garcia from DG Clima Innovation Fund. So I'm going to share some of the questions. I'm going to cluster a bit because we're receiving some of them. So some of the questions are around the products that you're offering and the type of support that you're providing. So one of the first questions was like, does always the program support venture debt and equity? And also, and or equity? So is always are both included? And how is this distributed between EIB, Catalyst, and the company itself? Distributed in the finance.
Yeah. So again, it depends. Someone is talking. It depends on the size of the project and depends on the stage of the project. If you're doing your first demonstration project, such as Energy Dome was doing, we would like to, again, we go out with a grant. Hello? Can you please go on mute? Thanks. So again, depends on the stage of the journey through pilot, demo, first of a kind. So demo, we would, from the Catalyst side, and we would like to support it with a grant of somewhere between 50 and 60% of the capex, but it has to be needs-based. So we really need to prove the green premium, meaning if you're selling a product above, with the same, price as a fossil fuel alternative, it's hard to justify the green premium. So the grant has to be justified that there is a need for the grant. Everybody wants free money, non-dilutive money, but we need to really prove that the project needs that money. And, again, we'd size it up to, somewhere on 50% plus of the project costs. And then EIB has a different sizing for venture debt. And then on the large scale commercial, where you do have commercial long-term offtake contracts, where it's a very large size, what we do is our usual ticket is somewhere between 50 and 75 million euros. We always need to be below 49%. So that's how we categorize it. For the equity, again, equity. I'll let Irene talk about their numbers.
Well, this is going to be a very short one, but basically, venture debt of EIB is maximum 50% of the total project costs. That's it. Easy.
And another of the questions online are about the application process. So first, what is the usual time from the application to the sign-in? And then there are also some questions about, well, if we know any company that is interested in this, what is the best way to contact you? Through EIB, Breakthrough Energy, or Commission?
Yeah. So one, again, because of the way we were set up before Catalyst-wise, it did take a while between when Energy Dome applied and we sort of engaged in earnest. But I would say when we did engage in earnest was around April of 23, and we achieved a signing by November. So again, call it 6-7 months. That is sort of our goal, our target on the grant side. On the equity side, it's a little bit longer because, those processes, projects are more complex. The documentation is far more complex, right? And then the best way to contact us is to apply online. There's an online application. Again, we check it every month, and that is the best way to contact. If you fit the criteria, if we think you're a good fit, we will contact you.
Thank you, Mario. And there is a specific question.
You want me to say for EIB? So for EIB is between 6 to 9 months from first point of contact to signature. We can do shorter. We can. We've done 4 months for one of our investees. However, and this is to say, I dare a project out there from the 400 people in the audience or here to beat the time and put us against the wall in there, because it's usually that we have to wait for projects to be ready. I'm going to be very honest with you, at the stage of scale up with the complexity of trying to build a project, I'd be very happy for somebody to be waiting for us. That'd be a good sign.
There is a specific question for large first of a kind projects. What is the state of permitting that you require for those projects applying for you?
Yeah, no, that's a great question. Look, in general, we definitely need to see a path to permitting, and we need to see a path to, a minimization of binary risk, right? If you say, hey, I haven't done environmental studies, and as a lot of us know, environmental studies sometimes are seasonal, so you have to do 12 months of studies and then apply, and then another 12, 18 months. What we would say is come back to us. So I do think a short, again, a 6 to 9 month, 9 to 12 month for large first of a kind, 9 to 12 month to ready to build for us is critical, and however the permitting fits in there, that's what we would be looking for.
Thank you, Mario. There are some questions regarding the risk of double funding. Some projects that have funds from the Innovation Fund, they're saying, what is the risk of being double funding from or state aid compatibility? Maybe I am best positioned.
Yes, please answer, Javier.
So,
by the way, Javier also runs a hydrogen bank program, so he's very familiar with funding.
So my first reaction, of course, this always have to be checked. InvestEU. No, it's okay. I can say from there. So InvestEU in principle is not considered state aid. No, it's because it's not considered centrally managed and is not subject to the discretion of a member state. However, the Catalyst is also providing funding from Horizon Europe, and that is subject, of course, that is EU funding, and accumulation rules may apply. So I think if you're concerned about any potential state aid or EU funding accumulation limitation, you should please double check before, check with the Commission, check with your authorities, please. And more questions online. There are several questions about eligibility of what type of projects can apply. Some questions of what do we mean with clean hydrogen? What do you mean with compatible with the delegated acts? What type of long duration storage? What type of direct air capture technologies are you supporting? I leave you to answer, but I think this is quite, there are several of them, but I guess this goes too much into the details.
Yeah, no, this is why we have an application, and this is why we like to just see things on paper. In general, I think what we make clean hydrogen is just, it is clean or ultra low carbon hydrogen that does fit the regulation. So the regulation, I think, is very clear. We don't define regulation. The EU regulation is the EU regulation. So I don't need to redefine that. Long duration energy storage, we mean non-lithium ion based, more than 10 hours. That is the bar that we try to hit. There's different technologies, and obviously the science and the tech needs to be proven for us to be able to engage in it. We do want to see a demo in terms of LDES, because it's very tricky, especially some of the innovative solutions that are happening. And in terms of DAC, I don't really understand the question, but again, we have different pathways where we believe are more replicable than others, and I think it was just we look at it on an individual basis.
Okay, I hope you're not exhausted because there are more questions here in the audience. Let's start.
I'm David from Icodos. We are a technology development company in the e-methanol space. And the question is, after funding Flagship 1, you're still open to fund more innovative projects in that field?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, we want to fund all of the e-fuel projects that we can. However, I would say that every project we do, we try to demonstrate a different technology and a different scale-up challenge. So if the setup is exactly the same with the same sort of type of electrolyzers, et cetera, it's going to be hard for us to make the argument that it is first of a kind. So we do like to see new technologies being tested and proven, especially in the electrolyzer world. We really want to see that sector be pushed forward. So the answer is yes, but new technology setups are required.
Thanks.
Of course, I have seen a hand here on this side as well. Mega.
Hello, Felix Wosten here from Climeworks. I've got one question on project finance setup. Is you want to see project development, which makes lots of sense. What we see is very tricky for first of a kind technology are two things. On the cost side, customers for an energy intensive process will want to see high amounts of guarantees that we have to commit upfront, which is constraining liquidity. On the other side, lenders want to see performance guarantees, which are very hard to give for first of its kinds projects over a very long lifetime that have never been operational like this, but just on a demonstration project scale. How do you see the catalyst coming in there, or what is your vision on tackling these problems?
I think there's probably two answers here, but on our side, we are trying to utilize some of the grant funds on large first of a kind projects around, not as equity, but around the structure. So it could be in the form of, performance guarantees, for example. I think in terms of the banks, I think it's very challenging for us to sort of support bank or guarantees, because that means that project, shouldn't really be using project finance, where if you're posting a large amount of guarantees to secure debt, you might as well just use that money or raise the equity and do it all in equity, right? So I think that's the challenge. You need to get into a sort of calculation, or is it really worth doing the debt if they're asking for, a one-to-one guarantee of their debt, right? I think that we'll have to look at it on an individual basis, but I think performance guarantees on new technologies will be very open to try to work something.
Sorry. Yeah, maybe just a word to complement. We're hearing a lot about your concern these days. So what you're trying to say is that it's very expensive for you to actually come up with all of these guarantees, because at the moment you need to fund them in the form of equity, correct? And obviously equity is a very expensive way of financing, correct? So linking the point that Mario is saying, it really depends on the level of riskiness that you're at. And Climeworks is quite at an early, I would say relatively still early stages, right? So it's at a venture type stage. We hear what you're saying. We hear that there's a need to find a more, I would say, efficient use of capital to support clean tech scale-ups in the journey, to build the order books and to get them there. And I think that this is something where we're taking notes of some programs that are being done by other bilateral agencies, and it's something that together with the European Commission, I think that we hear the message, and it would make sense to develop a pan-European instrument that would be specifically tailored to support working capital needs of clean tech scale-ups, have a more efficient use of equity capital in this case. So, point taken.
Yes, perhaps. Well, yeah. Okay. Let's take questions from the audience.
Thank you. Ruben Davis, Clean Tech for Europe. I have a question on the more on the offtake side, perhaps for Mario. So I think on the supply side in the EU, we're getting a lot stronger. We heard about the EIC, we have the Innovation Fund, EIB Venture Debt and Project Finance, also EIB Venture Debt coupled with Catalyst Grants, Catalyst Equity, and that can then unlock project finance from infrastructure funds, commercial banks. But on the demand side, we saw Ørsted's Flagic 1 project has likely also benefited from the reform of the EU's carbon market, including maritime, and then the ReFuelEU maritime regulation. I'm wondering, because I know in the United States there was a bit of a collaboration between Catalyst and the First Movers Coalition, sort of on creating a pipeline between the supply and demand in terms of advanced market commitments from corporates. I'm wondering to what extent something like that could also unlock offtake on the EU side, and then maybe if there's a role for green public procurement as well. Thank you.
A very loaded question, but yeah, please. Yeah, you could. Julia will take this.
This is perhaps not from the Catalyst side. I think our general perspective is that it's very important to have large corporates sign on to products and solutions that the clean tech community is doing. And so what our efforts were in the creation of the First Movers Coalition, which is indeed to commitments from corporates to buy percentage of volume of clean steel, of low carbon cement, was to help actually define what is green steel, what is green cement, what is low carbon fuels. And so that was the idea, was to make sure that it's actually not just defined by what industry says, but is actually listening to what is the emerging climate technology frontier and making sure that that's an ability to sort of make sure that the volumes of commitments will actually match what we see on the supply side from the startup perspective. Now, I think that's different from what Catalyst has been trying to do, which is much more think about how do we get these bankable offtake commitments, and there be much more involved from a project perspective once a project has sort of gone through the Catalyst pipeline, and then is wanting to look for more offtake agreements. So those efforts, whilst both moving in the same direction, are actually quite separate, even though there has been a call from the FMC organization to try and get more ideas of technologies and suppliers that could be able to supply the FMC pledges. But it's, again, quite different.
Yeah, Kari Suninen from Elstore again. Like in Ben's case, if we would do like heat as a service solution, do you have requirements that the entity has to be your own legal company? So if there's a 50 million project to provide energy as a service, do you have legal requirements for the structure?
I think I know where you're going, but for us, again, it's a matter of impact. So who is owning the project? In Energy Dome's case, they own the project and they provide a service. If you're asking whether we would fund a project that is owned perhaps by a very large corporate, we would have a hard time doing that, because the impact is, can we really prove impact if we give 40 million euros to a, company that, has a, $30 billion balance sheet? I think it's very hard, right? So we would like to, again, the impact to go to the tech providers and the tech innovators as opposed to very large corporates.
Yeah, actually, I
think that was your question, yeah?
Yeah, of course. I was thinking that these large corporations are not there, but only like we with investors.
Understood. Okay. Yeah, I mean, let's talk about it offline. Yeah. We can wrap it up now.
Thank you very much. Thank you very much for your time, for your questions. Before we adjourn, there's a few words from the person who is really the godmother of this partnership, the person who brought us together, the person who is now heading Breakthrough Energy here in Europe, but is our former Director General at the European Commission, Anne Mettler. Will you come and tell a few things from your perspective as well?
Thank you so much. I'm, of course, also the person who hasn't been here all afternoon, so it's particularly pretentious to be giving the closing remarks. However, I will do so now. So firstly, a huge thanks. Is the mic on? Yeah. So firstly, a huge thanks to all of our partners in the EU Catalyst partnership, especially the European Commission, and compliments to you. I mean, you've done so much as well. And also European Investment Bank, Irene, thank you. I mean, this is, as you know, this is a huge collective effort, but also all of you in the room. If you didn't have interest, there would be no EU Catalyst partnership. So, I also want to thank those online for joining, of course, as well. I believe, and I have always believed, that Catalyst really can be transformational for Europe. I'll say more about this in a moment. But first, please allow me to reflect a little bit on the recent European Parliament elections, and also the forthcoming political cycle, which will, of course, commence in earnest late this year. And Anna already mentioned it. I had the privilege of working in the previous European Commission. So I know what an exciting time this is. And thank you, Mario, for completely for running away while I'm speaking. But an exciting time this is, because, of course, now is...
because the title page to be up. Thank you.
Okay. So, okay, good. I'm glad to hear that. So no, but just really, I think all of you need to understand this is really now an important time because new policy programs will be drawn up, priorities will be defined, redefined, and really powerful ideas. And I consider Catalyst such a powerful idea. Really, a lot of these powerful ideas have the potential to really be amplified, turned into action. So against this backdrop, it's important, I think, that we're now not completely tone deaf to what happened last weekend. I mean, it was a seismic shift, and contrary, frankly, to what I've heard at some of the events in these past days, it was not an endorsement of 5 years of more of the same. And I therefore believe that we urgently need a Green Deal 2.0 that is firmly centered on investment, jobs, technology, innovation, industry, startups. And we also know that in addition to climate, other very pressing concerns are taking center stage, especially security and competitiveness. 2024, very unfortunately, but 2024 is very different from 2019. And I think we all know that. So the promise of the EU Catalyst partnership is that it's really a triple win: climate, security, and competitiveness. And I know that almost sounds too good to be true, but it is not. And I would go even further and say that the EU Catalyst partnership is the answer to a particular and very long-standing European challenge. So just yesterday, I took part in the Trusted Investors Network that Commissioner Ivanova, who is responsible for research and science, convened. And there they shared a lot of data with us, but the data that stuck out is really the number one challenge that our startups face is, and I mean, you guessed it, it's scaling. I mean, this is what we're talking about here as well. And in energy, this challenge is even more pronounced, as the first of a kind commercial scale projects are an absolute necessity, but they are also notoriously difficult to finance, to de-risk, and to operationalize. And this is, of course, exactly where the EU Catalyst partnership can be what it aims to be: catalytic. And it can help us overcome our number one challenge in Europe and help our startups to become scale-ups. So when we think of the EU Catalyst partnership, we need to realize that this is actually more than project finance. This is also about creating the ecosystem that can put Europe squarely on the global map again for breakthroughs in clean technologies. It is a template that frankly took years to establish, but that can now be seamlessly replicated by others who are looking to really move the needle on Europe's clean energy transition. And together we can establish a new generation of public-private partnerships, more impactful, more tangible benefits of the energy transition, not just higher costs, and more reindustrialization. And many of you have heard me say that the Green Deal needs a business case. EU Catalyst is at least one of these answers. And it does show the way forward for a Green Deal 2.0 that finds more acceptance, that brings carrots and not just sticks, and that can be a game changer as we embark on a new political cycle that truly presents a make or break situation for Europe and the EU. So thank you for your attention and thank you for your interest. And I hope I was able to put what happened here in a larger political context, because I believe everything that played out here today is actually part and parcel of what needs to happen in the next political cycle. So thank you for giving us that inspiration, for being part of this journey. And I believe, Anna, correct me if I'm wrong, this concludes this meeting. Thank you so much.